Chapter 3. The circle's drawn. One of the threads from Darius's coat sits inside it, cradled by the dark powder that constitutes it. Asher stands outside of the circle, balancing a tongue of flame on the tip of his finger, and Darius shakes so bad he can barely see straight. "What's wrong?" Asher asks. "You want to go home, don't you? Marco told me you'd probably be the most excited." "Marco knows shit," Darius grunts, feeling as if he can't get the words out fast enough. The powder around him smells metallic, like blood, and he suppresses a cough on the dusty air. Asher cocks a brown waves out the fire on his fingertip. "So, tell me what's going on." Darius doesn't want to go spilling his entire life story to Asher of all people. He knows the kinds of sadistic things this being's capable of, acts so unthinkable that it could unwittingly drive him back to a self-made prison deep within the recesses of his own mind. But right now there doesn't seem to be a thought in Asher's head. Seems as if they all slipped through that gold-sheened, crusted-over wound. Though Darius still suspects that Asher's memory isn't as gone as everyone else had assumed, after some waiting, he finds that he has little choice but to speak. "When I first came to this world, I was running away from something," he says slowly, picking each word carefully. "If I go back to that same place in time, I'll be caught, imprisoned, killed." Asher's waiting for him to finish, but Darius can't find a good word. "Something bad will happen?" Asher asks. "Yeah," Darius says. Asher lets out a long sigh. "I'll be right back," he says, and he heads over to one of the wooden walls, looking up at the drawers spanning floor to ceiling. Then he places one hand around his other arm and pulls. His arm elongates, which has a sickening sound to it, a sort of crinkly, organic sound. And as he stretches that limb out, his hand hits the floor, followed by the coils of his arm. Darius looks away, putting one hand over his mouth as his stomach tightens. Eventually, he hears a drawer open far above them, then he hears it close. He hears Asher shift his form again, grimacing as he imagines the muscles and skin folding in on themselves. Finally, Asher's bare feet thunk against the floor as he returns. "Take this." Darius looks at Asher. He's holding out a small, flat rock to him, dull and gray and about the size of his palm. Darius reaches out and takes it, examining it. There's a magic circle in it, more of an oval, actually. Within the oval, the light, crudely carved lines form a circle with rays emanating out from it, flanked on either side by feathered wings. "If things don't turn out the way you hope over there, you can use this to return here," Asher explains. "Just touch any form of fire to that and you'll be swept back here, just like how this circle's gonna bring you back home." Darius runs his fingers over the lines in the stone. "Just one problem," he sighs. "I don't have a way to start a fire on me. I swear when I put myself in my box, I had my gun and my matches and my flint. Where'd it all go?" "Oh," Asher says, "I can get you some. Just don't move. Please don't mess up the circle. I don't want to have to work on it anymore." With that, Asher carefully traces around the edges of the circle and leaves the room. Darius stands there for a moment, his heart pounding, the back of his neck cold as if it's wet. He grasps the stone in his hand, squeezing it with all his might. Now that he's been out of his box for an hour or two, the pain of living's starting to come back. The ache in his chest when his heart pounds too hard, the growing hunger in his sunken belly, the dull pain in his limbs from the lack of food and water and sleep and pretty much everything. He doesn't know whether or not he had managed to take care of his basic needs while he was in his box, nor any idea how he survived if he hadn't. Was he just walking around like a mindless automaton, doing everything that life in this world demands without any thought behind it? Asher comes back with a box of matches. He hands them to Darius, and as Darius grabs the box and looks it over, he realizes that it's his. It's his own small cardboard box, cream-colored with blue lettering, and tilting it in one hand, it has about the same amount of matches rolling around inside as he remembered leaving it with. "You took them?" he asks, glancing up at Asher. "I did," Asher says, once again conjuring a flickering flame at the end of his finger. Darius balks once again. If Asher remembers taking those matches from him, then on some level, Asher remembers him, which means that he must have been faking his memory loss, which means that this is all probably a trick. Asher drops down and touches the flame to the edge of the circle. Darius's heart leaps into his throat. Sputtering, he lunges forward, trying to avoid Asher's spell, but it's over in an instant. He doesn't land on the wooden floor, but instead in a marshy wetland, rain pounding down around him. He props himself on his hands, watching the mud between his fingers rise around them. Tree leaves rustle above him as the wind blows harshly through the forest. Thick, stinging drops of rain pelt his back and his scalp. In the distance, he can hear dogs barking. It's as if everything that had happened over the last few years had been nothing. Nothing but a fever dream after slamming his head against one of the low-hanging branches in this soaking hellhole. Darius is on Earth again, just beside the Mississippi River, running for his life from a group of locals that, hell, might have even been some of his customers before he had done what he did. He is no longer a victim, but a perpetrator. And if he wants any semblance of a peaceful life, or even a life at all, he has to get away. His shoes skid against the mud as he pushes himself up into a run, leaning into long strides with no control over where they land. His blood roars in his head and his throat feels dry despite the thick, humid air settling heavily around him. His fist clenches tightly around the rock in his hand, knowing it could be his only way out of this, but with the matches in his other hand soaked, he'll have to get away first and find a way to light a fire later. And that's assuming that Asher was being truthful about what the rock will do once he lights it. And with the barking getting louder, complemented by the clear ring of human voices, Darius finds himself with no other option. He keeps his eyes open for the silvery glint of water, passing by small puddles from the rain. When he finally finds a body of water longer and deeper than he is tall, wide enough to even clear a spot in the canopy, he takes a breath and plunges inside of it, the cold flashing through every inch of his body like lightning, the torrents beneath the deceivingly calm surface thrusting him downriver, head over heels, and the rushing water in his ears drowns out the sound. End of chapter 3.